power of a video game franchise resides in the time people have spent in the world. It's so engaging that the emotional connection you make with it is quite unique. I don't think there's ever been a playbook for anything. You need to leave enough room for a strong creator to express a point of view. And I still believe video game will be one of the key source of adaptation, and I think they'll lead the way for anything transmedia. Once people become co-creators, they are here for the long haul because they are really part of their time, of their creativity, of their emotion has been ingrained into what the franchise has become.
Hello everyone, welcome back to the Speakeasy. I'm Joe Condon, I'm joined by Gabriella Geisinger, and today we are joined by Hélène Duguay from Ubisoft. Welcome
Hello.
To the show.
Thanks for having me.
And welcome to a slightly warm London.
Never as warm as what Paris is right now, so I'm very happy to be here.
Yeah. You have aircon over there, we just don't here, so it's there you go. Listen, we love to start off by talking about people's journeys, and you've been at Ubisoft for a while now. So I'd love to talk around that journey and I guess how your role has evolved maybe over those years as well.
Okay, sure. It's been officially 28 years.
Wow.
I know, yes, wow. That's what I think also every time I say it aloud. And I would say there's really two different careers in there. First as a video games marketer, really. Started as a assistant brand manager all the way to VP of global brand strategy. And after I had done pretty much every single marketing job, I decided to move to another part of the business, which is the film and television. And that was quite exciting because then I got to take some of those IP I helped create and transform them into new medium, film, TV, but also podcast, comics, webtoons, which I'm in charge of right now. So that's a very exciting journey. Still learning.
Always learning, even after 28 years.
Exactly.
Really cool. I guess for you, I guess video games marketing 20 years ago or so is very different to what it is now.
Yes.
So I'd love to maybe dive into what that role looked like and then how maybe that's advised how you think about the film and TV side of things too.
It definitely was a different business and different role because at the time, one of my very first job was probably to go pick up the master physically from the airport, from the customs, and bring it to the printer to check also the prints to put it into boxes that would then go into stores. So that was that at the time. So the marketer was a very different role, and everything now has become digital, of course. Marketing is online, and social media did not exist as they are today. So it's definitely a different time and a different job. And some of it, I don't know if I would be able to do now anymore because you lose a lot in a few years, to be honest.
But you were still figuring out a playbook of sorts 20 years ago. And I guess that's semi-similar to what you're doing today as well. There's not necessarily a playbook for how to adapt IP across necessarily. So it's figuring out that journey as well.
Yes, and I don't think there's ever been a playbook for anything because truth is, whether it's video games or film and TV, those two domains have evolved so much every year, every 6 months even. Things change. In video games, you've had the console transitions and you had to relearn everything. All the cards were redistributed differently every time. And you had the winners and the losers of that new playbook, as you say. But you had to relearn. And I guess audiovisual is the same. You know, when I first started, I had to explain to my boss what the Fire TV was from Amazon or what streaming was. And at the time, I was one of the first that had put that little DVD in the little envelope for Netflix and send it back because I couldn't stand the Blockbuster late fees. And I had to coming back to France, explain what that was and what Netflix was. Imagine that now when you see how huge it is. So every 6 months, we have to reinvent the rules as the industry completely shifts and the power play has completely changed over the course of those 28 years. So it's never, I don't think we have time to write a playbook and it becomes obsolete right away. So you reinvent every time and you look and you search and like, where are the opportunities? What does that mean for my business? What do people, how do they consume their media right now? What do they enjoy? How do I talk to them? And I don't even feel that any single year has been like the previous one in those 28 years.
So I guess, when you're working with very established franchises, of which Ubisoft has many, I guess figuring out what the right timing is for bringing those to different, whether it's across the film or, getting that timing right is there's no playbook for that, just to say. So, like, how are you figuring out that piece of, I guess there's, a slate of different IPs that you're working on at any given time, and trying to figure out what's the right medium for it, what's the right timing, what's the right positioning, let's say. I guess that's, it's a moving target, like you say.
It totally is. And what I've learned is timing you can control. So we've tried. I've given up on that. It needs an alignment of things that are almost impossible to plan for. Or if you do, then you're going to miss on quality, or you're going to put so many constraints that the the movie or the TV series itself won't be as good as it could have been because you've tried too hard to make it fit with the launch of this. Yeah. It's really too hard. Launching a video game is super hard. Launching a movie is also an alignment of stars. If you try to do both at the same time, it's very complicated. If you look at the last successes or the first one where people say like, oh, finally video games have gotten it right, which is Last of Us. The truth is the franchise at that time wasn't very active. Yet they made a huge success out of that TV series. And it came at a time where there wasn't that much activity on the brand itself. And they revived it, and it's amazing. But what is really the timing that it took to get everybody to make that at that point, there's a lot of random or passion at that time. You have someone that loves the IP. The IP becomes available for adaptation because there's also the matter of the rights, who has the rights and what you can do with it. And then suddenly it becomes someone's passion project. And that person has some power in Hollywood, for example. And suddenly the streaming market opens up, which opens brand new audience spaces, which didn't exist before. You had to fit into the TV grid. And now you're free of that. And sometimes it's just a brand is being revived because a new game comes out and suddenly it's a bigger success. And then, boom, you get some wind in your sales and you can go back putting your package together and presenting it again in front of a buyer. And next thing you know, the buyer changes and then you're back to another 2 years of development. So the hardest thing, and I will never put that as a constraint for myself anymore, is timing.
How much of that, because we're just talking around like the winds changing and just all of the pieces falling into place, how much of it can be kind of constructed to some degree of you have your plan of you want stuff to go out X, Y, and Z, but then also just being able to be nimble enough or be able to react quick enough to those winds changing and then being able to make the most of that momentum that's building around one of your franchises?
I think being nimble and agile is always the most important right now. I would say it's not always, you have to be both. And that's the most difficult thing today is you still have to be super heavy when it comes to premium productions. Assassin's Creed TV series with Netflix, there's no being nimble with that one. It's like a giant masterpiece and it's super high budget, super high ambitions. And that has taken years of getting it right to finally, and it's been signed at Netflix for a long time, but getting it right, getting it to the level of ambition, having the right people on board, writing the right script, it has taken a lot of time. So that's like a huge ship to move. But on the other hand, you need to be able to have very nimble things that can take advantage of a new segment that opens up or a genre that suddenly picks up, like whether it's Five Nights at Freddy's, you have both that coexist. And both can be gigantic successes based on what you've put together to make them exist. Assassin's Creed, we're not going to be happy if it does an okay result, of course, given how much ambition we have. Five Nights at Freddy's, you can have an ROI that's amazing because you really were at the right scale when you developed it. And all of those projects coexist. in our development slate, and some they just pick up based on the trend, based on, ooh, this has succeeded. So then all the buyers want their version of that. So you get some wind in your sails. But you have to be able to have all of that spectrum of type of projects. Otherwise, it's a complicated job to just be chasing the big things and only them.
One of the things I think we obviously mentioned The Last of Us being sort of this landmark success in terms of what a video game adaptation for film and TV can be. And I was also thinking about Death Stranding, which is also becoming a film. And there are certain game IP that feels that they quote unquote feel cinematic, right? There's an element of storytelling. Are there game IP that you have where even if that portion isn't there, you see fan engagement around a character or around a moment, and you think, well, actually, even if the game itself doesn't have that narrative element, there's something in this that can then be transitioned. So it's not looking at the IP holistically, but maybe these tiny little elements.
Yes, most of the time people would spontaneously think, oh, the story on this video game is great. It can make for a great movie. It was the case for Last of Us, of course. It's the case for Splinter Cell for Ubisoft, for example. It's a pretty heavy story-driven game also. But I think what is really making a difference in video game IP is that they are created around systems first. And because you have a system, then you have a system of stories that can be told. Sometimes they're a little bit more linear. You have one main story. But if you look at things like League of Legends, you don't spontaneously think at first, oh, this is such a great story to be told. But what they've done is from that system, they've developed many different facets of it through music videos. They build character, they build emotion, they build stories. And not one single linear stories, but a world and, as I said, an ecosystem. And then from that spans multiple stories. And then someone with a clear vision decides, I'm going to tell that story out of this world because that's the one I'm interested in. But I don't think there's Minecraft is definitely not story driven.
Right.
You see what I mean? And yet you can make it's a Minecraft movie for a reason. It's not the Minecraft movie because you could have told many other different stories in it. And that's what I think also video games for that are quite interesting compared to books, for example, because it's not an adaptation of what the book already said. It's really a point of view and a director's vision. I'm going to place my character here, my camera, and I'm going to tell that story within the Assassin's Creed world, for example. The story of a teenager that happens to be the daughter of an assassin. And that will give me like a young adult version of what Assassin's Creed can be. And that's what's amazing with all those video game worlds. There's tons of story within those systems, and you can decide what audience, what genre, very often, and what point of view you want to tell.
Maybe that's the sort of agility, nimbleness thing that you're mentioning, right?
Sure.
Is the ability to find different facets of story that suit different audiences and different trends that you might be seeing from the sort of the other side, the buyer's perspective as well.
Exactly.
You mentioned League of Legends, and I guess like the backstories. You could take it any given direction. I guess it's semi-similar to kind of the Rabbids franchise that you have now as well. Obviously, it came from the game from Rayman. But now it's kind of built into its own franchise, and it's got an animation series as well. And I guess we've chatted before that for a lot of people discovering Rabbids now, it might be through the animation series rather than through the game. So we'd love to dive into, I guess it's trying to figure out what's the first touch point that people are having with a franchise, and it might not be the game, even if that's where it's come from.
It's not anymore, for sure. We have like the nostalgia factor is very strong, of course. People that they grew up playing Rayman, discovering the rabbits, sometimes feeling angry at the rabbits because they've taken over Rayman, and they loved Rayman, but it's coming back. There's all that audience that still exists, but it's true that the animated series, which was targeted to a younger audience has been taking over in terms of visibility and branding. And now most of the people, and especially the kids that know the rabbits, they know it through the not the video game, but the animated series. And they don't even know it's a video game because it's not as active on the video game side of things. But also what we're seeing is a lot of them are discovering it through YouTube because we have a very big presence on YouTube. It's become a meme. How do you say? Meme? A meme. It's become a meme, and people, they create their own signature with it. So it's starting to have like a social presence, even if they don't know where it comes from. They just know that little irreverent figure. And I guess it's translated through many different audiences now, and it's actually quite exciting to see it come around. Where it's not so much a video game anymore. It'll come back, but things cycle through. And now maybe one day the video games will become an adaptation of the animated series.
Maybe we can talk about that and figuring out like what's the right timing for the right medium for the right franchise. Because I guess if we're talking transmedia and big buzzword, but it's all about getting the IP in front of as many people in as many places as possible, really. Yes. So if we're talking about Rabbids, the timing isn't right for games, but it is right for animation. So how do you think about that internally when you're kind of figuring out your strategy for different platforms or mediums, and I guess figuring out where in the life cycle a franchise is and what could help to push the needle?
I think Rabbids is an excellent example for that because it's one of our most nimble IP. First of all, it's a form factor, and at its core, it's irreverence. And irreverence translates differently whether you're a kid and you're like at school. Being irreverent is like saying no to the teacher or not standing still or things like that. If you're an adult, being irreverent can be a little bit more
complicated,
raunchy or whatever. You can put it in a lot of different ways. Yeah. The difficulty is we have all that spectrum we could use. How do you decide? Because also, if you decide you're going to go for family friendly, you got to be careful also with some of the stuff you put online. But it's big luxury to have such a strong IP that's so malleable. Is that a word? Yeah. It is a word. Wonderful. It's a French word, actually. But we've had some time when it exploded really with the Wii. But when the Wii died, it was a little bit more difficult to find a new expression on video games. It wasn't as efficient. And then the TV series took over. And now the form factor makes it so appropriate for social media. We've pushed like a big campaign of new little clips and shorts. And it's done over 4 million views in just a few weeks because it travels so conveniently. It's TikTok by definition. And I think actually what we've realized doing it, because it's quite recent, is that we are the original brain rot. The rabbits are the original brain rot, really, because it's absurdity. It's like little snippets of just something fun and unexpected, and that sometimes makes no sense, but makes you laugh. And so we're coming back to a world that actually accepts that as a cool moment and things they're looking for.
I'm curious, you talked about rabbits being malleable. How do you consider maybe an IP that isn't quite so malleable, that has a dedicated audience, or like with Assassin's Creed, there's a very specific sort of audience that's catering to. It's not going to be a family-friendly necessarily film or show. So I
would actually argue that you could make an Assassin's Creed version that's family friendly,
and it wouldn't dilute.
We've made educational things out of Assassin's Creed. We've made documentary based on Assassin's Creed because it's so heavily history researched. So Assassin's Creed is actually a very wide IP that you're able to translate into many different mediums. It's wonderful for that. It's a treasure chest. And I'd say Splinter Cell is not as malleable, for example.
Oh, okay. And so how do you manage that without losing the core of what that IP is or means to that specific, let's say, video game playing audience as you're trying to target new audiences and bring in these other
I'd say the example of Splinter Cell is interesting because Splinter Cell is an IP that also hasn't been done in video games for quite a while, and the fans have been really eagerly waiting for it. And we've developed a TV series for Netflix, and that's not always what they're waiting for. They want the game, so they're very vocal about that, of course. And we make choices, and the TV series is not the game, so of course you're going to have to make choices. You have a different audience. Of course, you bring the fans, but you also want to cater to different people because it's also Netflix need. And so you tend to make choices. For example, you're obviously a bit more action because stealth in a TV series on episodes of 22 minutes can sometimes be a little long. So you do need a little bit more action than what the game, for example, propose. And so how do you balance that against what the fans know and what they remember as being those super high intense moments of stealth from the game? That is really the secret sauce, and that's what's very difficult. You need to strike that balance. Also, we've used Liev Schreiber as Sam Fisher. He did an amazing job, but that means it wasn't the original voice of Sam Fisher. It wasn't Michael Ironside. Right. And that has been a complicated conversation also with the fans. And I think what's important is you stick with it. If you're convinced, you stick with it. And there's a lot of noise. Sometimes you're a little scared looking at social commentaries. But we knew all along that Liev Schreiber was an amazing voice actor for Splinter Cell, for Sam Fisher. And the second the series came out, nobody ever asked that question. And we knew it, and that's what we were going for. But you have to keep going with the vision, accompany the vision of the director you've chosen, and hope that the fans will come along, even if you're proposing something slightly different.
I guess it's honouring what helped them to connect with the franchise in the first, but also keeping it current and
Exactly.
evolving it so that you can keep onboarding new audiences as you go. But if you're talking around a director taking over a franchise, let's say, and bringing something to development, how important do you see it that they've grown up with that franchise, or at least have a connection to it, so that they know the ins and outs of what's going to get people going or what people really want to see?
I think it's essential. I think it's where it made the difference between IPs that were treated like licenses just for the brand we had built, and IPs that were treated with heart and respect and that were finding the right connection to the fans. Because we have a generation in Hollywood now and in all the audiovisual domain now that have been growing up, or even if they haven't, they've seen how much their kids have been engaged into some of the IPs, or they've seen how this is a new medium to connect with their kids, play together. We had that also with people that have played together Assassin's Creed, that have done some Rainbow Six game against each other, and that emotional connection that they understand, you can find in what they write or what they propose in their vision. And on the other hand, I've actually also seen the opposite. But usually you don't continue with those, and that's why you don't see that. I've seen people where from their first take, I could tell that what they understood of the franchise or how they loved the franchise or respected it wasn't there. And so we stopped and we changed because, it's not going to go where you need it to go. It's not going to connect with
And
the
audiences
fans.
are clever. They can see that.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course, they can feel it.
Yeah.
They definitely can, and and they tell us
It's the danger of
very
social
vividly.
media, right? Yes, yeah.
You don't have to guess.
No, you don't have to guess. But that's what makes it so interesting to work in this domain, also in this sector, because there's never a dull moment when it comes to feedback from the community.
Maybe because we were just talking around like people that have grown up with games moving up into positions where they can greenlight a lot of these things as well. So, do you see that games, I think it probably already is, but will become the main source kind of material for a lot of film and TV moving forwards? And I have a second part to that there's a gold rush at the moment. So if you're looking at people trying to adapt any game franchise humanly possible, even moving down to kind of like UGC games now at the moment too. Like, do you think that, I think I probably know the answer, but there's, do you think that there will be a lot of duds as well, where people are trying to get on board but just don't understand the nuance around the franchises that they're trying to bring in? And I guess as we've talked around, like how, engaged a lot of these game audiences are, and protectiveness around their kind of franchises too.
I think people are starting to learn and they know better a little bit. So yes, there is some of that gold rush and not everything is going to work out for sure. But that's just the movie and TV business, whether it's video game based or books. It's, if we knew what the perfect recipe was, there would be never a movie that tanks, which doesn't exist. But I think people are understanding a little bit better the dynamics of what needs to be part of that adaptation or that world expansion that they're doing. So we're going to see less, I think, movies that are completely out of what they're trying to say. You're going to find movies that are probably too proper, too close, too... I mean, being too respectful can also be a problem. It doesn't make necessarily for a great narrative. It doesn't make for great movies always. Yeah. So it's going to have the first movie do well because you'll have all the fans wanting to see it. But if it's not great, then movie number 2 will tell you. That's what I'm convinced of. And since you're probably going to put more money on movie number 2 and more marketing money, then your return will be less interesting. But that's, the business has always been like that anyway. And I think books are always going to continue to be a material source, just like video games. And now I think we're also moving to YouTuber and creator economy being a big source. Yeah. And that makes sense. What they're going for is really the fandom that comes with it, and whether the fandom comes from book talk or from a video game community or from a content creator. What you're going after is the fandom, and understanding it is what will make what you're doing successful or not, and scaling it to the right level, having the right means behind the right fandom. If it's super wide, super mainstream, you can take some risk. Yeah. If it's super narrow, then just adapt what you're doing, and success can come that way.
I guess if there's an audience inbuilt around something and a fandom, then it kind of de-risks it to some degree, right? So that's why you see people backing established franchises rather than investing in new ones. So I think that's a tricky place to be, I'd say, from a consumer or a fan perspective, where there's not a lot of new IP coming out either, because it's risky business to try and fund something new. How do you think about that from, you obviously want to service audiences and be able to, continue to deliver great experiences around those franchises, but then also you'd want to be bringing new stuff and trying new stuff and trying to reach new audiences. And I guess, like, are you trying to build new franchises that reach new audiences that, your current franchises don't?
Yes. That's the short answer. We're always looking for new segments where we're not and where it would make sense for us to be. You don't want to overextend yourself because it is a complicated business, video games for sure. So you want to also know what your strengths are. Sports, for example, is complicated to get into if you haven't been before. But you want to secure your bets and still continue going into places that are new. First of all, because in a company like Ubisoft, you have so much talent, and people get tired of doing the same thing. They want new. They have ideas. They're creative. That's why they're here. So they contribute to a franchise like Assassin's Creed. But then after they have other ideas, they want something else. And if you don't give it to them, to give them room to express that, first as a company, you don't do as well. People get tired, and we also have experienced some of that. So you need to keep giving people fresh things to work on, because otherwise they dwindle. And same thing for the audience. At the core, the creators that we have at Ubisoft, they also are their first audience. And they want something fresh, new, different. They want groundbreaking stories. So we're always developing new IPs because it is very complicated. It takes a long time to get out, but you have to continue. Otherwise, you just end up rehashing the same thing, and we've seen where that goes.
Yeah.
It's in this movie also. Some of the biggest licenses right now are kind of getting a bit tired. It happens everywhere and all the time. It's very normal. So if you don't keep surprising your audience, then you're gonna slowly die for sure.
I was curious because just to sort of circle back a little bit, when you're talking about figuring out the best sort of medium through which to take this video game IP and then translate it to film or TV, are there ever moments where there's like friction between the video game sort of ideations and creators who maybe have a vision of it being a dark and gritty HBO style drama versus something that actually maybe lives in an animated space because that offers you more flexibility to adapt a video game world? How do you manage those tensions when they arise?
Well, we love those tensions because I think creation only comes when there's tension like that, of course. So it happens all the time. We negotiate, we discuss, we on board, we bring a point of view. We also have meetings with the creators. Sometimes we push a little bit and we're not always aligned at the beginning, but then we work it out, or sometimes also we back off and say, you know what? We're not ready to go with that one because the constraint that they have do not allow us to give enough room for the real creator to express a vision. So we'll do something else. We'll do like, okay, let's do branded content then. And it will be more of a marketing tool. And it's great, but it's a different thing. And sometimes we work together and manage to figure out what would make sense with what medium. And I'm a strong believer that it's not either or. It's not like, oh, it would be better suited for live or it would be better suited for animation. I think there's a live expression and an animated expression and a social medium expression for pretty much all of our IP if they are well built. When they're franchises, what makes them franchises is that you can find an expression in every single medium and you use them. The strategy is really to decide what medium you're going to use to do what. And for example, on Assassin's Creed, we know that a TV series with Netflix is going to have to be like the big mainstream anchor. And it will have to be strong enough to bring, of course, the fans, but also maybe more women than the gaming base we have, because you want to watch it all together. And people that are just huge fans of historical period drama or some romance, of course. But we also know that if we have an animated adaptation, we can try really cool new genres. We can also go more local on some stories, because the ambitions are very different. And so all of that is part of that construction of trying new things, deepening more genres. One will switch maybe a little bit more towards a more horrific vibe. And then you test that and see. And if it works well, then we're super happy to be able to bring it back into the games. For example, we have in China, we have developed a whole new lore of Assassin's Creed. It's called Assassin's Creed Dynasty. And it started with digital comics. And the digital comics were such a success that now it's become a whole new Chinese version of Assassin's Creed. And it's also is being discussed as being developed for TV and movies and working on other dynasties. So we've, from a local, what we call precursor, we've built a new area for the game, because the goal is, of course, that one day there's a specific Chinese Assassin's Creed game. And when we've managed to do that, that's a huge success for us. It's full circle, and we serve the whole ecosystem of Ubisoft and the IP and the lore itself. That's really what we're trying to do.
As like a thought experiment. So let's say that it is a huge success. You get the Assassin's Creed China game comes out, and amazing, everyone loves it. What are those sort of strategic thinkings in place to then not go, okay, well, now we're going to do Japan, and then we're going to do India, and then we're like how do you sort of decide when to pull back on something so that it doesn't have that fatigue that we were just talking about?
I think the local strategy is interesting because what you end up with is the fatigue is true if you were to do the same area. But if you in India, there's no Assassin's Creed fatigue.
Right. Okay.
Or in China, there's no Assassin's Creed fatigue.
So
And
you're not worrying about taking those things and then growing them more globally. You're just sort of treating your local audience.
it's your starting point. And then if the Assassin's Creed China, let's say we make a game out of it, becomes successful worldwide, that's wonderful. It's super fresh. It's a very different perspective on the franchise. But I don't know that we're going to push it to be worldwide.
Right. I see.
And then Assassin's Creed suddenly becomes like the dream is for people in China to believe that this is a local IP, just like in India. The day you manage to make them believe that Assassin's Creed is an Indian IP, you've succeeded in really exploring all those different areas. And for that, Assassin's Creed is amazing because it's a soft power tool. That's what I love about it. It's like every country can consider it a soft power tool because it tells their story or it unfolds pieces of that story that are unknown. So, whether it's through an expression of a novel or a mobile game or a digital comics, you have a starting point. And if it takes on, then it can grow into something that's very strong locally. That's a great way of expanding it for now.
Maybe we can talk around like what makes something a franchise. Like what's the ingredients of something where you think that needs to have all of this around it to support it to grow, and it has the momentum that it can be a long-term kind of franchise versus something that may well have an audience and be really engaged but doesn't necessarily have the depth of story, let's say, to enable it to become something bigger than just an IP.
And you're right. There's a difference between a hit, one hit wonder, and a franchise being built. I mean, the franchise that's successful always starts with a hit. But I think in the way it's built, it's a little bit different. I will take a video game perspective because that's where I come from. But for us, what it is it's an ecosystem. Again, when you look, and the chance we have in video game is, especially at Ubisoft, we're a specialist of being worlds, of building worlds. And building worlds makes it by nature an ecosystem where thousands of stories can live, thousands of perspectives, because you've done the hard part of explaining, making something that consistent, that works with systems. It has biomes, it has climate decisions, it has a set of characters, whether they're primary or secondary, and a DNA or a system, that one core system that triggers it all. In Assassin's Creed, it will be hide in plain sight, and that's the starting point. And from that, you can project yourself into hundreds of stories. Splinter Cell, also, it's the hide and seek. And it is in a military setting. Can you make it differently? Can you go somewhere else? And that military setting, based on what's going on today in the world, we have a lot of stories to tell still. Some that are actually beyond what we could have imagined. And I think, to me, this is what makes a franchise. You can already project yourself into so many stories because the system holds itself. It's an ecosystem in itself. At least in video games, that's how we think about it.
Cool. It's, I don't know whether it's a good or bad thing. There's a lot of stuff going on that can be there at the moment. I guess purely looking from like an audience perspective of it, like are there any indicators where you see like a certain type of engagement, or like audiences are, whether it is that very vocal minority that really wants to do something, that maybe you have to look at it and say it feels right but not the right timing, and how do you manage that audience? Kind of clearly they're on board with the IP or with the franchise, but kind of managing their expectations of like when things are coming, because clearly you have a master plan of stuff and it has to kind of adhere to that too, so the story makes sense.
I don't know that we managed to. There's plenty of IPs that are currently being worked on, but never fast enough for the fans that are expecting the next version of it. And it's actually tough because the things leak. And so we keep also when you keep on working on those IP that are so beloved that they will go for anything to latch onto to see that as a sign. Sometimes we do things that have nothing to do, but then we will say something and people grabs on it thinking, ooh, that means Rayman's coming back in that form. Or like, that is not what I thought would come out of this. But it is, I don't think we really control much of it. We tend to react to it. It's a great problem to have, really, when you have the people that are that engaged. It's a great problem to have. Sometimes it's just we're just sad we can't satisfy all of them because making the quality video games that we want is long and difficult, and sometimes the market isn't there. And it's not a winning proposition for us also to do that. And we have to wait until the market comes back to that style of game, or that we're able to do it in a different way that makes economic sense. So we can always say yes to all of those requests, of course. What we tend to do now that we've developed a lot of films and TVs, we also try to propose new forms for it. But when fans love the video games, they really want the video game.
And it takes time.
And it takes time too.
Cool. Maybe, you're one of the definitely more established in kind of building out franchises, and you've got so many that you're looking after. If you're on the opposite end of the spectrum, and maybe you have had that one-hit wonder, and now figuring out how do you put the kind of structure in place so that you can start to grow it, what would be your first bits of advice or your first steps that you would take to be able to do that?
I believe that when you're a young company, let's say that has done a great hit or something that's successful, your first reaction is probably to want to do the literal adaptation of that. That's the first reaction that everybody has. It's been such a success. We should do exactly that story, exactly that. And I think you need to leave enough room for a strong creator to express a point of view, of course, based on what has been done, but to strike a strong creator that will bring you something fresh and something that will onboard all your fans, you do need some creative room. So leaving creative room is always one of my first advice, and being careful about the rights, not giving away your rights, not too long, not too exclusive, being able to get them back if they are not used, so that you can be in charge of your own destiny for your brand and you don't give it away to somebody else is essential.
Are there any other common mistakes that you see people making aside from those, or are they the two that you would really...
Timing.
Yeah.
Always wanting, being sure, we need this timing. I think let go of timing. Try to align as much as you can, as hard as you can. But be more serendipitous with it, and you'll be less tired and less frustrated.
Clearly, you are one of the OGs when it comes to the crossover between games and entertainment. So I'd love your take on, clearly there's an acceleration between those two verticals or worlds colliding. Where do you see it landing in the next, I don't want to too much of a crystal ball.
Crystal ball, yeah. I was about to pull it. Crystal ball, tell me.
But maybe in the next, what do you see in the short term, and then what do you hope for perhaps in the long term?
Well, there is a little bit of I'll take anything that's gaming and make it into a movie. That becomes a little bit overdone. It'll calm down, as always. It's a phase. So having worked on it for so long, I see the phases. They come and they go. I think the power of a video game franchise resides in the time people have spent in the world. It's so engaging that the emotional connection you make with it is quite unique. Very few medium, I think, have that ability to bring such a strong to build such a strong connection. So I don't see that changing, and I still believe video game will be one of the key source of adaptation, and I think they'll lead the way for anything transmedia, because this is built in. Like, I don't believe any other medium has that built in like we do, being an ecosystem, being a platform, being social from the get-go. And that has been a huge difference. A video game is a social experience also. And we've seen how it's been becoming platforms in itself. All those elements are built in, and I think it's only going to continue as we go.
I think the community bit's so important, because any business that's built around audience or fandom, it is the connecting point for a lot of people's social circles. So it makes it that much more sticky. Like if you leave your favorite football team, you lose the community bit around it, or like the weekly kind of going to the game, whatever else like that kind of thing around it. So I think it makes it, there's that much more responsibility on all of our shoulders, because you do have that connection that, barring anything too dramatic, people will be there for a long time, or, lifelong sometimes. But I guess it's figuring out, like, at certain points throughout their life as well, there might be things that they need from the franchise, but then they might drift off. But then occasionally they might come back as well. So I guess it's having those touch points that are available to people, and I guess understanding like what will motivate them to return as well. And I guess that's easier said than done. But like, how are you guys thinking about that too?
I think an important thing that we try to do is, and more people are co-creators of your franchise. They love to participate. They love to it's a part of who they are. We've received so many letters from fans on Assassin's Creed saying, "You've been part of my life for the last 15 years. Thank you." As people were leaving, it's like, "Thank you for what we've done. You've changed the way we think, or you've made us feel so many different emotions." And that is really a very cool statement to read. What we try to do is engage them to co-create, because I think once people become co-creators, they are here for the long haul, because they are really part of their time, of their creativity, of their emotion, has been ingrained into what the franchise has become. And even if they're alive, they have kids, other priorities, they will come back with their kids in it. Or they'll grab another medium. I know some people don't have time to play Assassin's Creed or World of Warcraft anymore, but they would be super happy to read a novel, because that they still have time to once the kid's in bed. Well, 10 page and then they fall asleep, probably like me. But, and that's what I love about the job I do now, is that I also, by putting it on different medium, I allow people that have left to come back through something that's more adapted to their life now, but to stick with the franchise and still feel those emotions that they used to have. That's cool.
That's really cool.
There's something really interesting when you're talking about different mediums as well, and people in different points of their fandom. And then to go back to what you were saying about Assassin's Creed as a show, trying to bring more women into as an audience, as fans. One of the things I always struggled with playing video games, I'm very vain and I want the character to look like me. And it's very, very difficult to get a video game character with curly hair. And I can't imagine what it's like for people like natural, different textured hair, to see themselves reflected in those characters. And so by branching this game or any game IP out into a world where all of a sudden you can reflect lots of different people, and people who maybe had historically felt a separation between themselves and that world. Because you talk about video games really are the place where you're embedded in that story. And so when there is that little separation, other mediums can bridge that gap in a way that maybe gaming, because it is hard to design hair like mine, or, and lots of different natural textures,
and although
as an example.
Video games have done a great job at now letting you choose your avatar.
Yeah.
And that's been also a great progress for also letting a lot of different people come in, which movie is harder to do, of course. AI will get us there.
Oh, God.
I don't know about that, but yes, it's representation is a key element, and I think video games, for sure, as a medium, was one of the most forward in that, because being able to create your avatar, you could decide what you looked like, who you liked, and also there was a lot of political backlash on that, but it is what society is, and our role is to reflect that.
Helena, it's been so fun getting into your brain. I really loved it. I think we'll wrap it up there. But Gabriella, thanks so much too. Thanks everyone for listening or watching, and we'll see you for the next one.
Thank you.
Thank you.